So something I get asked all the time, and actually something that I ask other people all the time, is what's the one thing that you practice if you've only got a little bit of time? Well, today I'm going to tell you about how to... So it's been a crazy morning this morning, actually getting the kids to school. It's Halloween dress up day. So we've been running around this morning getting all sorts of weird and wacky makeup on them. Josh has got a bullet hole in his head. Go figure. It's freezing cold this morning, 2 degrees. It's like our first really cold day of winter. Been off on holidays this last week, and whenever I come back into the studio after a week of being away, it always means I've got to spend a bit of time getting my tone back together, getting my fingers warmed up. I just can't wait to get in there and get my saxophone and get started. So I've been off on holidays this last week. It's been half term. I've been off with my kids and with Emma, and actually Emma's parents. We've been down doing fun stuff like crabbing and walking on the beach. But that of course means I've not done much saxophone practice. So today, Monday, the kids are back at school and I'm finally getting a bit of time to practice. Not in my studio though. Em's up in my studio today and she's doing something really important. So I've been relegated to the kitchen to do some practice. My mission today is to actually get things back in shape, get my embouchure back in shape. Because if I've had a week away from playing, and maybe you'll find this as well, I'm just not happy with my sound. I'm not happy with my fingers, I'm not happy with the quality of my tone, I'm not happy with my intonation. So those are the things I want to work on today, and if I've only got a few minutes to practice, those are the things that I focus on. So let's have a talk about how to do that. But first of all, let me show you the crabs that we caught on holidays. So Josh, how many we got?
295. We're trying to get to 300.
8, 2. Okay. Right, so there's two elements to my practice when I haven't got a lot of time and I really want to work on my skills. So remember, I want to work on my tone quality, I want to work on my fingers, I want to get my embouchure really warmed up, and I want to just make myself feel a bit more loose with the saxophone, a bit more comfortable. Okay, so two elements. The first element is I'm going to work on chromatic scales. Chromatic scales, these are like the golden ticket to fantastic technique. I think that I've always worked on them, and you know, loads of the great pro players that I've interviewed over the years all say the same thing. Chromatic scales are the miracle. If you want some tips on chromatic scales, check out my 7 chromatic warm-ups video. Loads of great stuff in there. But anyway, so chromatic scale, if you're not aware of what a chromatic scale is, basically it's a scale where we go up in semitones or half steps. So, sounds like this. Now I really like chromatic scales basically because you get to use every single key on the saxophone. And that gives you a good workout with your fingers because you get to, you know, basically use all these different combinations of fingerings. You're going to use every single note that you'll possibly use in any piece of music. Now I'm going to work on chromatic scales in octaves, okay? So just from, let's say from G to low G to middle G. 1 octave, that gives me a small enough space that I can focus on it and really make sure that I'm getting everything right. But it also means that I can move it around. I'll show you about that in a second. Okay, so chromatic scales, basically I'm going to start on G. I'm going to go to G sharp, to A, to B flat, or I could do it 1, 2 and my side key. So B flat, to B natural, to C, C sharp, and then octave key goes on up to D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp and G. Alright, you probably know your chromatic scale anyway, but those are all the notes. I'm going to stick my metronome on really slow, about 70. I'm going to do it in quavers or half beats. Now what I'm trying to focus on here is my fingers. I want to make sure my fingers are super even. I'm going to think about my sound and make sure my sound's even. Use lots of air and really try and get a nice even up and back down again. Okay, so the temptation is to go really fast, right? You're probably thinking, this is too slow, I can go faster than that. Big mistake. You want to go slow. Why? So you can really think about the details, because the thing about technique and building your technique up so that you can play fast, everyone wants to play fast, is you need to look at the tiny details. That doesn't sound very sexy, it doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but that's what you need to do if you want to go faster. So you need to practice slow in order to go fast. So I always practice really slow. I've got my metronome set to 70 here, and I could even go slower than that actually if I'm honest. But at 70, I've got time to think of all those individual notes. You might find for you want to go slower. I might do this at 60. I'm going to do that again, and I'm going to really listen to those details. I thought between C sharp and D was a bit glitchy, so I'm going to really think about that this time. Okay, so once I got that right, I'm going to start on a G sharp now. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to go all the way up to G sharp. So I'm just adding one note. And now I'm going to start on the A. B flat. Okay, so you can see you can keep working up your scale, only adding one note each time. And that's great because you've only got one extra note to think about. And it also means that every time you do your next iteration where you go up another semitone or half step, you're practicing all those other notes in the middle. So you're really giving your fingers a great workout. Now, only once you can do it all over your range and feel super comfy can you start to increase the tempo. And so eventually, what we're aiming for, and it's got to be gradual, so don't rush yourself, you know. If you go up from 70 to 80 over a week, then that's fine. But to be able to play it fast, you need to practice it slow first. And the other thing I'm just going to quickly say before we finish up this part, and then I'll tell you about the other technique that I work on, is that the chromatic scale is so useful to you. I mentioned already that it uses all your different notes, but you're going to find that all of those fingerings that you're working on in your chromatic scale are going to come in handy in any piece of music that you play. So it's so important to work on that chromatic scale. If you've got time to work on one thing, work on your chromatic scale. Super important. Okay, so the second thing I'll work on in my two-pronged attack to getting your technique back in shape is I work on simple blues improvising. Simple blues improvising. Basically, I put on a blues backing track and I blow through a blues. And I keep it super simple. Now, the reason that I work on this is because I want to get my creative muscles flowing, okay? So I guess there's a couple of different things that are happening here. I'm working on because you need to practice actually creating new lines. So I'm working on my creativity, but I'm also, the other thing I'm working on is I'm just brushing up that link between my ears and my fingers so that I can play whatever I hear in my head. Those two things really work together. You know, if you can build that link between your ears and your fingers and you can practice your creativity, then those are the two most important skills that you'll need to make killer solos. Put that together with some great harmonic knowledge and you are on a winner. So the first thing I do is I get on my iPad, I've got IReal Pro, which is really, really awesome. And it's a great tool. And on there's a ton of blues patterns, standard things that are already set up. I'm going to use a dead simple blues for this exercise, and I'm going to change the tempo so it's nice and slow. I'm going to set it to about, I don't know if you can see there, set it about 110, and then I'm going to make the key, it was in E, so I'm going to use the key thing and I'm going to change it to something really simple like C blues. Okay, can you see that? Simple C blues. Okay, so it's a real easy blues. C blues, that means it's in the key of D for me on tenor saxophone, and if you're an alto player, it'd be in the key of A for you. Doesn't really matter what key it's in, it's just about being simple, because remember we're working on those two elements, we're getting our creativity going, and we're working on that link between our fingers and our ears. Hey, if you need some tips on how to play a blues, check out my other blues lessons in here, because blues are a great gateway to working on improvising, and also really developing those two skills I'm talking about, developing your creativity, developing that link between your fingers and your ears. Now what I'm going to try and do here is just put the blues on and play through it. I'm going to think about my melody shapes I'm creating, I'm going to try to create interesting shapes, but keep my ideas simple. Simple rhythms, simple melodic ideas, thinking about the timing, and really try and shape out all the notes in that chord. Okay, so. Okay, so you get the idea. Now, whatever your ability is with improvising, it doesn't really matter. I think going through this exercise of just simply putting on a blues, being free about things and thinking about just creating some nice melodies, but really focusing on those two skills, right? Your creativity, so coming up with whatever ideas you can, challenging yourself to come up with something different every single chorus, but also developing that link between your ears and your fingers. Now, if I do those two skills, if I work on those two parts of my practice, which I could probably do in 15 minutes if I was really tight, but it'd be better if I had half an hour or an hour even, by working on my chromatic scales and then doing some simple improvising. At the end of that, I'm going to feel really warmed up. My fingers are going to be warmed up, and I'm going to be confident with my technique, and my embouchure is going to be warmed up. I'm going to be confident with my sound, but I've also done some work on that link between my ears and my fingers and my creativity. And you know, I find if I spend a few days doing that, then before you know it, I'm feeling back in shape again. In fact, it happens pretty quickly because I guess I've been practicing for a long time, and you know, the longer that you practice, the quicker you get back to that point where you were before you went on holidays and went crabbing and walking on the beach. So I hope that's been helpful to you. I think it's really important to have a strategy for how you can structure your practice. I wrote a little book actually called The Ultimate Guide to Practicing Saxophone. It's a really simple little book, and thousands of people have been, use that book now, and it really helps them because it lays out in simple terms, probably the stuff you already know but we forget to do, how to structure your practice so that you can be an effective learner. That's really the key, I find. There's lots of people that have got fancy saxophones, that spend lots of money on mouthpieces, that have great ideas about what they want to achieve with music, but they don't get there, and it's because they haven't got a good system to how they practice. So if you really want some good tips, then that's a great starting point as well. So whatever you're doing, I hope you get some good structure with your saxophone practice today, and keep practicing hard. And don't forget too, if you're new to this channel, so the first time you've seen one of my videos, click subscribe because I'm making new videos all the time to help you learn saxophone and hopefully improve. And if this has been helpful to you, leave me a comment and let me know, because your comments help me to make better videos. Keep practicing hard. See you next time.
Thank you.